In his most recent Let's Play episode, episode 595, Etho teased an upgrade to his original Shulker reactor using snow golems. And as it happens, that's a concept I've been playing around with for a while, and I recently landed on what I think is a pretty good design. So I thought I'd show it to you all before Etho's video comes out, and inevitably blows all my ideas out of the water. So, here's the farm. It makes about 5,000 Shulker shells an hour, which, to my knowledge, is the highest yield of any single Shulker farm. Which is a loose term, but this really isn't 3 Shulker farms in a trench coat. It is one big farm, and it is big, 256 blocks tall exactly, so you can build this in the end, or from Y64 to build height in the overworld. It measures about 30 by 30 blocks on its sides, but despite its size, it is reasonably simple to build. The bulk of the farm can be built using cobblestone cast from lava and water, scaffolding, flowing lava and water, and bone meal plants. So in a sense, you really only have to build the top and the bottom. The rest sort of builds itself. Now this is a reactor type Shulker farm. I won't explain the concept here as there are plenty of other videos that do so, but I will explain the optimizing of a Shulker reactor. And there are basically 2 metrics that matter. First is the population of Shulkers in your reactor. Any reactor will be able to sustain a certain population of Shulkers, and the bigger the better. Second is the average Shulker lifetime in the reactor. The shorter, the better. Over this time period, the entire population will, on average, be replaced. So the more Shulkers you have, and the quicker they're killed off, the higher the rates you get. Now population. And to optimize that, you first want to build as big of a farm as you can, but only so big that the mechanics of your reactor can still work effectively. And for this design, the limiting factors are the group aggro range of Shulkers and the build height. The second thing you have to do to maximize population is to have high space efficiency. As your reactor gets going, the population will increase at first, but eventually taper off as the reactor gets clogged up with Shulkers that reduce the chance of a Shulker successfully multiplying. The other thing that factors into that chance, however, is how many valid spaces are around each Shulker. So having high space efficiency, a lot of valid spaces, is important, because that's going to be the baseline for this equation. Those 2 factors, the size of the farm and the space efficiency, will determine your population. Now this farm uses the layout you see in front of you. We will have a snow golem in the center, Shulkers around the ring of lava that the golem will hit, and Shulkers in the small channels. It is 20 blocks in radius, which is the radius of group aggro from the snow golem hitting the Shulker. Though obviously it's a square, because that's much easier to work with. So when a Shulker in the center hits the Shulkers around the lava ring, that will trigger group aggro for all the Shulkers in this slice of the farm. Let me show you. The layout consists of these 2x1 channels, which give a lot of valid spaces for Shulkers, but it is not optimal. It is, however, really important for the second part of the equation, Shulker lifetime. Now, to minimize Shulker lifetime, we need as many Shulker bullets hitting as many Shulkers as possible with their shells open. And again, there's 2 parts to that. First is the hit rate. A 2x1 closed channel is ideal, because that's the space a Shulker takes up when its shell is open. A Shulker bullet will try its hardest to avoid colliding with the wall, so it will end up traveling up and down these channels, eventually hitting a Shulker. That is going to ensure that most of the Shulker bullets actually hit a Shulker. Now that's the easy part. The hard part is consistently triggering group aggro throughout the entire farm, while still keeping things simple and consistent, and I think I found a way to do just that. First, we have to understand the fundamental challenge with group aggro. If I go ahead and spawn in a new Shulker in our layout down here, you'll see it doesn't get aggroed, because group aggro only triggers when a non-aggro Shulker is hit for the first time. Other reactors use a simple contraption like this, sometimes called an aggro cell. It has a single Shulker and a single snow golem with something controllable blocking line of sight. So if I open the trapdoor, you'll see that the Shulker gets aggroed, and so does its buddy. But when I close it, there's a really long cooldown before the Shulker de-aggros. Yeah, it's pretty long. And that introduces a critical delay between triggering group aggro. You could have 2 Shulkers and have the snow golem toggle between them, but this is already somewhat complicated. You need to get a snow golem and a Shulker into a very specific location, a mechanic to block line of sight, control that mechanic with redstone, and ideally monitor when the Shulker is aggroed to reset aggro most efficiently. And remember, for a farm of my size, which is important size of course, you need something like 10 of these aggro cells. So what's the alternative? Well, there's a slightly better way to de-aggro shulkers. Here we have a similar setup. We open the trapdoor, the shulker aggros, but if I now send the snow golem away, the moment it passes out of the range, the shulker de-aggros. So we can re-trigger group aggro much quicker this way. Obviously this is pretty bulky, so instead we'll be moving the snow golems up and down the center of the reactor, hitting shulkers in the central column. With that, we can get into the mechanics of the farm. If I fly over here and press this button, you can see how it works. Now snow golems, they don't like water, but luckily minecarts don't mind it at all, and their hitbox is slightly larger than the golems. By aligning the minecart against chests, which are slightly smaller than a full block, we can move the golem up the bubble column, and have them fall down the flowing water column nice and slow, so they'll have plenty of time to hit the shulkers. As they fall down, they drop the aggro, allowing for the shulkers to be aggroed again, and trigger group aggro. The benefit of this design is if I press the button again, you can see there's nothing stopping us from having several golems traveling up and down the same system. In the reactor we're going to have 24 golems, and to manage that many we need to expand on the redstone a bit, as you can see here. This system has a built-in clock which dispenses the golems at regular intervals, and a holding cell for when the reactor is turned off. There are a few finicky details to work out, but overall it's not too complicated. The hardest part is shulker proofing it all, as per usual. So that's the first part of our aggro mechanic. The second part is making sure that the golems have something to hit. Our central column, the aggro column, needs to be stocked with a set amount of shulkers. Not too many, as the shulkers in the aggro column are not stored in this ideal 2x1 column, so they won't be getting killed off as efficiently. But you don't want too few either, because then we can't reliably trigger group aggro. Now there's two ways to maintain a stable number of anything. One is to not add or subtract to it. That's what you do in the simple aggro cell I showed earlier. That's not going to work for us. Inevitably, one of the shulkers in the outer columns are going to multiply and appear in the aggro column. The other way is to use differential equations. I'll try to keep it simple. We need to be both removing and adding to the number of shulkers in the aggro column, and either the adding mechanic needs to decrease based on the number of shulkers, or the removing mechanic needs to increase. What does that mean? I'll show you the problem first, and then hopefully the solution will make sense. Here's a simple demo. Golem, shulker, lava. Open the piston, and the shulker starts firing into the lava. The bullets are deleted without damaging the shulker, so effectively we have no removal mechanic. Any shulkers in the aggro column will fire into the lava, never get hit, and will never leave. But if we introduce something to mess with the pathfinding of the shulker bullets, well, it looks like this. Yes, the bullets will still occasionally fly into the lava, but sometimes they'll hit the shulker. It won't happen as consistently as in the 2x1 columns, but we now have a way to kill off the shulkers in the aggro column. And this simple layout actually satisfies the requirement I mentioned earlier. Let's say it takes a minute for a shulker in this configuration to kill itself. If we have one shulker in here, we're removing one shulker per minute. But if I have 50 in here, we're removing 50 per minute. So, if I add shulkers into the aggro column at a fixed rate, let's say 10 per minute, the aggro column will sustain 10 shulkers, because once there's 10 in there, we're killing them off as fast as they're getting added. So if I now add a controllable way to continuously add shulkers into the aggro column, we can sustain a specific population in the aggro column. And that leads us to the final mechanic, flushing. If we occasionally pour some water down the 2x1 columns, some of the shulkers will randomly teleport into the aggro column. And if I add a clock to it and tweak its timing, I can control how frequently that happens. Now pouring water down the columns is no easy task, because what will happen is that the water of each block of the column will join up and will fall down the farm much slower. Let me show you. You can see the water decays very slowly, which means we'll be covering up a large part of our farm for a long time. And that impacts space efficiency, which in turn reduces our population. The way to fix it is to trigger each dispenser in the column for a short period of time, slightly offset from one another. Then we can quickly and efficiently flush the entire farm. Now, triggering adjacent dispensers separately is somewhat annoying. They'll butt power one another almost no matter how you do it. The best way I found to fix it was by using observers. I think what happens is that the pulse is so quick that it doesn't have time to butt power the neighboring dispenser. But that does mean that you need a lot of observers. Basically, the entire top of the farm needs to be covered by observers. And that's it. That's how the farm works. And it really is all about optimizing aggro. The rest is pretty basic and easy to do, but I wanted to explain it anyway. And as a testament to that optimized aggro, let's enable hitboxes briefly. And yeah, there's a lot of shulker boards in there. There's a lot of shulkers too. It's something like 100 to 120 shulkers in the farm at any given time. And all the shulkers are aggroed pretty consistently. There's still some optimizations you could do. The clock for the flushing can always be optimized more. I have 25 items in it right now. You could change the layout a bit, either by making it the full circle instead of the simplified square, or by actually lowering the snow golem dispensing below the farm. This would make the farm slightly shorter, but it would let you fit in some more 2x1 columns. That might have some unintended consequences for aggroing, but I think it could still be beneficial. I really look forward to reading any comments on this. I'm sure that a lot of people will have great inputs. I've left a world download in the description so you can tinker with this yourself. And if you improve on it, please make a video or a Reddit post or whatever. I'd genuinely just love to see your ideas. And finally, I'll be building this in my survival world soon. And if there's any interest, I'll record that as more of a build tutorial to show you what goes into building this. Alright, that's all from me.